I think we're live. Let's see. Good morning. We're live. All right, Bruce, I'm excited to talk to you again. So, if you're listening, welcome back to the Money Advantage podcast. This is Rachel Marshall and Bruce Wayner, and we are so excited when the technology works and we're able to have conversations with you without a whole bunch of glitches, and that's today. So, today we are talking about teaching your kids what they need financially so that they can make the best decisions and really getting them started thinking wealthy from a young age. And I am so passionate about this subject. I hope that I can restrain myself just a little bit in this conversation today because, gosh, this is so critical, especially if we're going to have good conversations with our kids because money connects to every area of our life. It's not the most important thing by any stretch of the imagination, but there's so much that you can teach through finances and through wealth and money. I see a little note about not being live on YouTube. I'm not sure what is happening. All right, bear with us. Well, maybe we do have some technical glitches. And if we don't, we'll discover that momentarily. All right, if you can hear us, give us a little wave, please, in the chat. That would be fantastic. I think we're on Facebook, Bruce.
Good now.
We are. Cool. Awesome. Well, it does seem that we have the wrong information on our podcast stream today, so I guess we had a different kind of glitch. Anyways, all right, we're going to be back in the program. So today we're talking about how to make sure that you teach your kids the right things about money, how to give them a wealthy mindset, how to set them up for the correct thinking about wealth and money, not just so that they can live a happy and productive and successful life, but really so that they can make the best decisions possible and recognize that they're stewards of the wealth that they receive and the wealth that they create, just as you are, and that if you are going to bless future generations or you're going to even have them benefit their life in any way by the way that they handle money, they'll be so much further along if they have a good handle on how to think about money from a wealthy perspective. Bruce, I would love your thoughts on this topic and how it shows up in the conversations that you're having with clients and with people who are um, trying to make the best decisions about wealth.
Well, first of all, we're recording this during Thanksgiving week, so I'd like to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And we're thankful for everybody that listens. I'm still amazed at how many people tell me they listen and enjoy our topics. And that's what you and I have. That was a goal from the very beginning, was just having some relevant topics and hopefully helping people. You and I don't know everything, but we try to get as many people on as guests that know a lot of things, and we research things, and we try to talk about topics that people really are thinking about themselves. Now, Rachel, that actually is the transition about what you just asked me is um, people are always want, I believe, to have this as a topic for the next generation or the family. However, they often do not know how to begin those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really sure why, other than I think it's the perceived busyness that we have in our families. And it's also that we live in the United States and we live in this constant barrage of, you know, consume your money, consume everything right now. And
Mm-hmm.
people, I think, just throw their hands up and say, I don't know how to get my head around this thing. And number one, I tell people, and a lot of times it's too late, it's too late for them to start this, but number one, it's just like anything, you have to develop habit early. So that means you have to talk to your children about this early. And I don't think there's a time that's too early to start the conversation. I really don't. You know,
100%. I agree.
people might say, well, and I'm going back to my educational days. I'm a trained educator. did it for 17 years, have a master's degree in it, so on and so forth. And they always emphasize the fact that you want to start these habits early. But the second thing that they emphasize is you need to talk to your children um, truthfully and straightforwardly, and almost like you're talking to an adult. You don't want to dumb down the concepts. You just want to tell them about the concepts, like delayed gratification, about compound interest, about stewardship, about tithing, about whatever topic that you believe is important for your family. That needs to be talked about early. And then we're going to talk about this, I think, a little bit later. But the number one thing I used to tell parents all the time is model behavior is more important than verbal behavior. So if they see, and you should share this with them, if they see that you're putting your money aside first before spending, then they will see that modeled behavior, and then they will do the same thing. So those are the topics that have come up over the years, and how we start to introduce how we talk about those things.
Bruce, I think I'm I love the way we start conversations every time because when you share what's on your mind around a topic, it just there's so much fodder for so much conversation within that. And I think I was hoping that you were going to rely on your education experience because there's a huge component of education for your children. You could also call it sales because it's you are needing to communicate important information to them in a way that they can hear and understand it. And you're needing to sell them on the benefits of things. I mean, you can look at this as young as selling them on why they need to brush their teeth. You're absolutely in a sales position when you're negotiating or not negotiating. You're commanding a 2-year-old, yes, we're going to put this toothbrush in your mouth. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. We're going to not have rotten teeth tomorrow. So it's really important to recognize that there is that component of, I think money sometimes can be almost invisible. The way that we handle it now, a lot of it's electronic. A lot of it happens through a card that you pull out and you swipe or tap or insert into a machine that is invisible to a child to understand what's actually happening. Well, money might look like a piece of plastic and a machine that spits out a piece of paper, and that doesn't necessarily connect with how it matters or what it means for someone. Where did it come from in the first place? How did you have it to be able to spend? But it doesn't necessarily make as much sense when you don't have the big picture. And so I think in conjunction with it being invisible, first of all, because it's so much electronic transactions that are happening. And also, you mentioned the barrage of marketing media and messages. It starts so young. You can barely even imagine a child who is not exposed to commercials and magazines and billboards would not know that they want to have the newest Barbie house. They wouldn't even know it exists. They would be 100% content to play with a pot and a pan in the kitchen and not even be aware that this potential Barbie dream house exists except for the commercial. And all of a sudden, their entire happiness is contingent on having this thing, or they saw it in a friend's house. It's all around us, and it can feel like you said a barrage, which is just a visual picture I'm seeing of this like torrential amount of contradictory information to wise stewardship, good spending, good money habits that you may want to instill in your kids. And then I think another reason why this can feel so tricky is that if you maybe haven't been verbally educated by your parents on how to have good money habits, you might be doing things subconsciously that you don't necessarily even realize you're doing. And it can be sometimes difficult to have mastery of something and then be able to break it down into words that make sense to somebody who is so much younger than you or so much newer to a concept. And I think sometimes that giant disparity between somebody who has a significant level of mastery. I mean, think of like a symphony, piano player. They're probably not going to be able to teach a piano lesson as easily as somebody who has maybe a more fundamental or basic understanding of piano. It takes a very specific person to be able to teach well. And so then you have all the other group of people that have negative feelings about money, or maybe they feel guilt, or maybe they're not doing things that they feel are modelable, copyable, and they have behaviors that they say, I hope my kids don't do these things, but they probably will fall into that same trap if you don't think otherwise. And so really money habits start so much before money is even in the picture. And Bruce, to your point of never being able to start too young, we're going to bring that up as well. But it is in such the fundamental, foundational, formative early years of a child's life that they're beginning to not only gain their concept of their identity and who they are, but also their idea of how the rest of the world works. And so our hope today is to give you some clarity on what to teach and how to teach it in a way that can give you some sort of empowerment and not feeling like you have to just be wondering about this forever. And I also do want to just encourage you, if you have adult children already, or you're a grandparent and you have really adult children who are now raising their kids at home, it's never too late to be able to think about some of these concepts and be able to communicate about them. Maybe you don't have the same training platform because they're not inside of your home and you can't have as much control over their environment or directing them as much, but you do have an ability to tell the things that are important to you and share them. It just might look like a different type of communication rather than training.
Yeah, having the adult conversation with adult children too, or preteens or teens. Once again, I think having that conversation like it is a conversation about inquiry, whether rather than accusatory, I think is always about a good situation for teaching. So, example, you might say to your um, college age, or maybe even somebody out of college, you say, "Hey, Rachel, what did you learn or not learn about money from us growing up that you wish you would have learned?" And that opens the door of, oh, mom or dad actually wants feedback from me to to help them be better. And then you can start talking about that. How would you do this differently with your current children or future children? Um, so those types of conversations, don't think that, oh, well, I don't have small children anymore, I can't have these conversations. You can actually engage them in that learning process. Um, I don't think I want to go completely down this road, but unfortunately, what I've seen way too often in my career in the financial services industry is people have to hit rock bottom, much like an alcoholic or a narcotics person, before they will change their money habits because they don't they don't feel the pain until it's too late. And oftentimes that too late is not understanding how interest rates can compound, and not understanding how um, your savings account or your stock account or whatever else can compound because they think, oh, well, now it's just too late. I'm now 50 years old, and now I have to take these big risks to get to where I want to be at age 65. So, unfortunately, if you don't talk to them about and try to instill in them that we don't want to get you to that rock bottom point. We want to try to change your habits. And Rachel, you brought up a really good point about money being invisible nowadays. Um, Even on your phone, I have a client right now that's working on a system that can you can actually have a one button on a website that will just pay through Apple Pay and Google Pay and all these other pays, so you don't even have to enter all your different information onto the website to get the sale. And making this invisible, back when I was growing up, some of the money habits that they would teach you was to not carry around a certain amount of cash, because we all carried around cash, but they say, okay, every day you need to put X amount of dollars in your wallet or your purse, and that's all you could spend that day. Um, if you had a credit card back then, if you even had a credit card, there were no debit cards back then. They would tell you to freeze it in a container and put it in your freezer And then when you had a inkling that you might want to go buy something, take it out and let it thaw. And that whole time it's thawing, you had a reminder, do I really need this?
I was just imagining like you put it in an empty container and you froze it. I'm like, what's the purpose of that? So you're talking about like fill the container with water, so it's like in the middle of an ice block.
Yeah, in the middle of an ice
Oh
block.
my gosh, that's hilarious.
And then that was a way that you had some time, because that's what's wrong with, like you said, with credit cards and debit cards is there's no time to make that decision. There's no pain that comes out. Oh, I'm counting out this currency, 20, 40, 60, 70. And actually that's why more and more merchants are trying to make it as easy as possible for you to use a credit card. Matter of fact, I don't know if you notice this at different places. If you pull out cash, they're often like, I don't want to say dumbfounded, but there's a hesitation like, oh, what am I supposed to do with this? Oh, that's right. We have a cash drawer.
You know
You know,
what's funny is I don't carry cash as much because I'm primarily electronic, but we have a 14-year-old and a 6-year-old, and so it just gives me a lot of context. We just got a debit card for the 14-year-old in our state of Virginia that or our bank. It was some requirement of either one or both that we were finally able to get a debit card for an account and have a checking account for her. Up until this point, we've had a savings account, but she hasn't had any access to be able to draw from it or use an electronic method of purchasing. So we're in the very early stages of this, and she doesn't even have the card in her possession yet. We haven't even logged her onto the account, so we're just getting ready for that training portion. But when she would carry cash, and you go up to the grocery store counter, there would be all of the, the machines that say no cash accepted at this one or this one or this one, but there might be like one register that she could shop at to be able to put her cash in rather than having to pay with a card. And so, yes, we have experienced that. We've seen places where they did not accept cash at all, and she would have to pay us back. We'd have to pay electronically, and then she would have to pay us back. But yes, there's definitely places that do not want to deal in cash. I mean, if they are dealing in cash, then they have to have the Brinks truck or whatever the company to come pick up the cash, and they have to sort all the cash into the drawers. It's a lot of a process for even a retailer to be able to manage the cash, count the cash. It's way easier just to have it digital or electronic for them.
there are merchants right now, usually in the types that have high theft, like bars and restaurants, where they will say they they don't accept cash anymore because they don't want employees to have easy access to that cash, which is kind of a sad commentary on our society right now. But that is definitely something that people worry about. Do we, you know, let's talk about how early money experiences shape the way people, view their finances as an adult. And I've shared this with, the viewers before or the listeners before that, I grew up in the 70s when we had Nixon had taken us completely off the gold standard in 1971, and we had massive inflation, and it was not a good economic situation. And my father lost his service station, and it was just not a good situation. And he grew up as the child in 1939, which was right kind of in the middle of the Great Depression. We really didn't get out of it until post World War II. And I would go visit my grandmother and grandfather, and they would have ration tickets from, this was in the 70s. They had ration tickets, coupons still sitting on their windowsills in
Oh,
their,
wow.
I can still remember seeing it right now.
Which
And
they weren't usable at that point, were they? I mean, that sounds like 40, 30 years
oh yeah,
after they were
right. But
usable.
but I remember my grandmother would use them to write notes on,
Oh, wow.
um, and she threw nothing away. My other grandmother, um, on that side, I had 31 first cousins. I mean, we
Oh,
we just
wow.
had a big family. And so when we got together, there were paper plates and there were plastic forks and plastic cups. And this once again was in the 70s. And at the end of these big holiday meals like Thanksgiving and so on and so forth, the my aunts would be in there cleaning and washing the plastic forks and the plastic cups.
Mm,
They were not thrown away. And all this shapes the way you look at things constantly.
mm-hmm.
Um, so it brings up another topic that I think our listeners ought to think about is how do you balance that scarcity mindset with an abundant mindset? And because I fall back into that scarcity mindset occasionally. I'm like, do I really need this? Well, I
I
do.
mean, you wouldn't be human, or you wouldn't be human if you never experienced scarcity, and you wouldn't be a truth teller if you said you never did.
Yeah, yeah, and and then I remember this old. I won't say it's a proverb, but it was like an old saying where a business owner would have an employee come and say, "Hey, this piece of equipment broke down," and the business owner would say to them, "Hey, can you get by without it today?" Yes. Can we get by with it for the next week? And the employee would say, yes. Do you think we can get by with it for the next month? And if the employee said yes, they would say, okay, well, we don't need to replace that piece of equipment because if you're convinced that way, so I kind of use that same mindset when I look to purchase something. Do I will I really need it, or will I get by with it for a week, or will I get by with it for 2 weeks or a month? So I think through that.
That makes me think of like a dishwasher goes out. Can I
Right.
get by without it for a month? Life's going to get really crazy at that point. Okay, a fridge. Can you get by without it for a day? Without it for a day? No. So, at least in today's world, you need to replace certain things right away. But, the shoe breaks. Do I really need another one exactly like that, or can I get by without the shoe?
Mhm. So I don't know if that's a scarcity mindset. It might actually be more of an abundant mindset because you're thinking, okay, now I have this money that I can put away and then compound. And that brings up the next topic I think we need to talk about is talking about saving first, delaying gratification first, and then spending what's left over. I think that might be the best kind of initial thing to talk about with your children. Okay.
I 100% agree. Yes.
And what do you do with your children?
So, man, there's so many things. And Bruce, if you could see my paper, I'm circling all the concepts I need to come back to, and I'll X them out when we get there. So I've got about like six things to come back to here. So saving first, I think it is the equivalent to delayed gratification. It is the equivalent to the marshmallow test. If you've heard that test where they put little kids, I think 4 year olds, and they said you can have one marshmallow right now, you can eat that right away, or if you sit here for 10 minutes and you have not eaten the marshmallow, I'll come back after 10 minutes and I'll give you two, and you can have both of them then. And so the thing showed, that test showed that the children who were able to delay gratification push off their instinct, resist the impulse to just do, have, taste, eat, consume right away, we're able to be more successful long term. Now, part of that I think is almost an ingrained personality. And we talk about this with our kids because we have, and I won't tell you who's who, we've got a spender and a saver in the camp of the ones who are able to make decisions about money. The 2 year old has no idea. But 6 and 14, one's a spender, one's a saver. I saw it clearly with myself and my sister. One of us was a spender and one of us was a saver during the early years. And what's really interesting is I think a lot of that can be personality driven, but it's really beneficial to communicate, to teach, to force savings if that child, especially if that child is not one to automatically save on their own. So what we do, we have a 3 jar system. We start with jars. We've used envelopes. We've used accounts. It depends on how much money is in these accounts, but we start at a very young age with 3 clear jars. You can see how much money is in each one of them. One's labeled give, one is save, one is spend. And they go in that order because if they get $10, and we actually, for a while, we're doing this with gifts too, like birthday money gifts. And then we decided, okay, we're going to let them keep the full gift and they can spend the gift. But if they earn any money in any way, then we're going to divide that up into give, save, spend. And so we have percentages written on the jars: 10% giving, 40% savings, 50% spending. We've been really consistent with our oldest all through her life. So any money she's earned, she started a cookie business when she was 8 years old. And so she had more income than most 8-year-olds. And she's now here thinking, oh, I just made $100. And we're like, okay, slow down because that's not all for you to spend. That 10 goes into the giving, 40 goes straight into the saving money, and 50 is for you to be able to spend. So she started thinking differently. Okay, well, if I want $50 to spend, or if I want $100 to spend, I actually have to make 200. I can't just make the 100. So she started thinking differently about how she was going to earn money and make money. And what it required was a habit of saving. She didn't necessarily like it, but the reason we started it so young is that it's easy when they have $5 here and $2 there to be able to spend only half of that and save a good chunk. And 40% might sound egregiously, I don't know, maybe we were too overbearing, I guess is the word I'm looking for, making her save so much. But when she got to be 10, 11, 12, 13 years old and she has way more money in savings than most kids her age, she's in a position where she can say, well, I kind of do like that. And so not only did we have the habit that we implemented for them at a really young age, then we started celebrating the savings. And we said, okay, look how much money you have in savings. Look how much you added in this month. And look how much your balance grew. And now we have this balance. And the next month, here's her bank statement with her name on it. And look how much money you have in savings. So instead of saying, look at all these amazing things you bought with your spending cash, we're like, let's turn the attention and the focus to how much is in savings. And this did bring up a big question of what is savings and what is it for? Like, well, do I save that money? That means like next month, well, I can buy something with it, or can I like, I saved this money. When can I touch it? What is it? What is it doing? Can I use it for a car someday? I mean, can I think of like, well, I have enough money to buy my own dog, so can I get a dog? So the question really became the savings is money that is set up for you to make more money. So if you come up with a business idea or you come up with some way that you want to invest this for the purpose of growing more money, then you can make that money expand even greater. So it's not for future spending. Your spending money is for future spending. If you want a big spending spree in 3 months, save up your spending money to be able to do that. But the saving money, that's protected. We're not going to be using that for anything except to grow your long-term wealth.
Yeah, I think this is a hard conversation if you don't really model it for children. Um,
Yes.
Prince Prince William and Kate, it was just announced a couple weeks ago that they do not allow their, I think, 12-year-old to have a cell phone, and they haven't really even told them when they're gonna have. I mean, we're talking about the heir to the throne of England, and
I
can't.
love that, by the way, Bruce. I just have to say we're 100% on board. We
Yeah,
started an iPod when our oldest was younger, so she can make some calls, but we're 100% on board. No cell phone until absolutely needed,
yeah,
probably 16.
and Gary V, who I'm not a huge fan on because I think he actually does make he's good at telling people that business is hard, but he also doesn't bring a balance into it. But he was talking to a group of young people about stop complaining that they don't have any money if they're going to spend money on stupid stuff. He was talking about, you know, $10 lattes and $30 cocktails on a weeknight that they go out to. And one of the young people said to him, "But what about the idea that you got to live life to the fullest when you're young?" And he goes, "I don't care, but then stop complaining." And because there is a complaint going on with young people that they can't afford this, they can't afford a house, they can't do this, they can't do that, they can't afford this. And it's almost like they're blaming the generation beforehand. And I'm not saying that it hasn't been, but Gary Vee was saying, well, but you're doing some things in your own world that could offset some of these obstacles that you're overcoming or trying to overcome.
Yes. And Bruce, I mean, what you're talking about is hard because I'm going to try to connect this in the simplest way possible. There are factors outside yourself and factors inside yourself that play into how much you spend. And I'm 100% aware of this. Yes, there is inflation in this world. Yes, the cost of food has gone up tremendously in what just I think doubled like in the last 2 years or something like that. I don't know the exact figures. It's a lot more than it was. Yes, the cost of houses has gone up, and the cost of buying a house has gone up. The price that you need, the threshold to be able to purchase, and especially if you're in Massachusetts, New York, California, I mean, it's super cost prohibitive for somebody who is just getting started with maybe a base salary or a lower income job as they're just getting into a career field. But this was really an interesting thought. So we're playing the cash flow game over the weekend, which is Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad cash flow game. And it was just the 6-year-old and my husband and I. So she doesn't know as much about money, but she's learning, money coming in is your income, money going out is your expenses. The difference is cash flow. That's what it's called in the game, but that is in your real life too. And cash flow is the amount that you're not spending of the money you make. So income, expenses, the difference is what you can put away, put aside, put somewhere. And so in the game, you have your cash flow. You're paid out your cash flow each month. And part of the reason the game works is because you're able to purchase assets, businesses, investments for the purpose of either selling them at a higher price and getting a big infusion of cash or purchasing a cash flowing asset that pays you on a monthly basis. But the reason the game works, generally speaking, is that overall they maintain your expenses fairly in a stable way, meaning they do factor in if you have a child or 2 children or 3 children, your expense for your household is going to rise based on the number of children you have and the expenses that are connected with that. So there are some things that increase your expenses. And of course, if you take a loan, you have the interest for that and you have to factor that into your expenses. But for the most part, your expenses stay fairly flat, which means, let's just say in your regular household life, if you said my household expenses are, I'm just going to make up a number, $10,000 per month, that's how much you're spending. Then when your income rises, you maintain the 10,000 of spending. Your income rises more, you maintain the 10,000 of spending. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy life, but if you maintain and stay within that same constraint, generally speaking, of the things that are in your control. And this is where I said there's the two sides. You have the cost of food, gas, housing, all of those things going up. You can't control that completely. So maybe your 10,000 a month has to go to 11,000 or 12,000 because of inflation, and you literally cannot buy the same things with the same cost before. But the real thing that you need to keep in check is the part of you that says, well, I've got more money. I'll just spend more money because I really want this thing and that thing and this thing and that thing. And before you know it, all of the discretionary spending, all of the personal decisions that you're making that are internal factors for what you choose to put your money into are rising along with your expenses. And so that game helps you to see that if you're going to save a portion of everything you earn, you either have to do one of two things. You either have to increase your income or you have to decrease your expenses. And wherever your starting point is, if you're at 10% savings of all the money you make and you want to get to 40%, you've got to make a bigger gap in between those two things, which can be really challenging to do as an adult, which is why it's so valuable to start that habit as young as possible.
So that's the next habit I think we wanted to talk about was how can earning money through chores, part-time jobs, or business ventures teach responsibility? I have I have mixed feelings on this. And the caveat for our listeners is, my wife and I were never able to have children, so I don't have the same emotional attachment to this discussion. Um, but when I was growing up, we never got an allowance because chores, what we call chores or assignments, was expected by the family. And so, you did it because that's what you do within a family. You contribute to the family. You don't do it because you were getting an allowance. And then if you wanted to make money, you had to figure out what you needed to do. It was above and beyond what we would say normal chores were. And, to some extent, it taught me that um, I have to figure this out. And then this is what we're going to talk about entrepreneurship. How can we foster that?
Mm-hmm.
We had to foster the idea of how we can make additional money. And it was easy back when I was growing up because one of the things you could do is you could hustle and collect aluminum cans that were just coming out, but even more importantly, bottles, glass bottles, because they were a lot more prevalent than aluminum cans.
Mm.
And because they didn't have to be recycled the same way aluminum cans did, all they had to do was be sterilized and filled back up. So you could get a nickel for every, and so we would go and collect bottles all the time. I remember going to back when I was growing up, softball and baseball was really big, even for adults. And so when you would go to these fields, you would every foul ball that went into the parking lot, you would scramble to go back, and then you could take it back to the concession stand, and they would give you 25 cents if you returned a ball or a softball. And so there'd be literally dozens of kids running around for these softballs and baseballs. And then
That's genius. They don't have to send out a worker to go pick them up.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. And then I started mowing grass, for different people. And as soon as you get that idea that all of a sudden money flows in from giving value to people, instead of you just being given it because of something that you should be doing anyway, in my opinion, then all of a sudden you start figuring out other things that you could do to earn money.
A
And
100%.
that's how you actually foster entrepreneurship, I think, with people. My dad said, "Hey, if you want that, you got to figure out how to pay for it." And I would figure out how to pay for it.
I think kids, humans, we rise to the level of responsibility we're given. And, Bruce, I think I find myself being very old-fashioned in almost everything where I'm talking with somebody 20, 30, 40 years older than me. I share a lot of those same values. So I think there's a renaissance of those kind of values coming up in my generation. I'm a millennial technically, but what's really interesting, Bruce, is we've made that choice in our family as well to not have an allowance. And so what that looked like is that when our oldest was, I think she was about 6 or 7, she first had the idea to want to make money somehow. And she ended up wrangling together some friends and had a lemonade stand. Of course, we helped a little bit, but she made enough money for her to distribute a paycheck to each one of the friends who helped, and they all made some money, and it was great. But what is really interesting about thinking entrepreneurially is that there's a principle behind earning money. Money doesn't, I mean, maybe I sound even more like an old-fashioned person saying money doesn't grow on trees. It's not just given to you. It's not just something that exists. It's not something we're just deserving of and it comes into our life. The principle is that dollars follow value, meaning the income is a result of something that's the cause. The cause is value creation. Value creation literally means I surveyed the landscape of humans either in my proximity or online or somehow, and I figured out there is something that these people want that they don't yet have. And if I can somehow figure out how to give them what they want, they'll pay me for it. This is as simple as a lemonade stand. They want a nice drink. Most people who buy from a lemonade stand probably are not doing it for their own good. They're probably doing it for the kids. But when you look at finding out a problem to solve in the world, maybe they can rake leaves, maybe they can mow some grass, maybe they can do an extra chore, maybe they can do something above and beyond the level of responsibility that's required of living in a home. And so this is where we actually did require chores from a very young age. And so we loved being able to have our little 3-year-old carry the trash through the house. She collected all the trashes when she was younger, brought them all down to the kitchen. She wanted to then tie up the kitchen trash and haul it to the dumpster. She was not big enough for it. So we, of course, were helping. But what's amazing is when you require chores from a young child, things like dumping the trash or clearing the silverware out of the dishwasher, they can then feel like they're a part of something, even as simple as cleaning up their toys. This is a level of taking ownership and responsibility, which then allows them to look around them and say, wow, the trashes need to be handled. Somebody needs to do that. I'm providing this kind of value, which is then the precursor for them to be able to take on responsibility and ownership of something so they can get paid in the future. So we actually do have a process in our family right now. The oldest two, then we've created a way for them to have more responsibility for paying for things. So we have them contribute to their dance payments um, and to dog food for the oldest. So there's a fixed expense that they have for living in the home because these are things that they're taking advantage of. Of course, we're not having them pay rent, but what we did to balance that was to give them household gigs that are more than keeping their room clean and clearing the dishwasher and the trash and, all of the basic chores. But we have our oldest vacuum the entire house and we pay her for that. And she knows that it's an expectation. She has to do this. She cleans all the bathrooms in the house. It's a bigger job than just maintaining her space. And so we pay for that and then have a fixed expense that she has for ownership of some dance payments and dog payments and things like that. So that is a way to hand some responsibility and also hand the ability then to do something we'll talk about next, which is being able to spend money wisely. Because when they have more money to spend, then they have to decide how they're going to spend that.
Yeah, exposure to I think you talked about champion the growth of the savings account.
Mm-hmm.
If you also point out, and it's not as prevalent as it used to be, but if you also point out the fact that the money that's in the savings account's also growing because of interest that you're earning on the savings account, and calculate that with them so that they know now, what if I take out 20% of that? What will my next interest payment be on the money? So that they understand that there's an opportunity loss to that money being withdrawn and spent somewhere else, and teach them now you have to decide whether that enriches your life more than what that money would have grown for in far into the future. And the best way to do that is actually go over those numbers with them. Um, I mean, I remember with my first savings account, just it was painful for me to take any money out because they would show you how much interest that you would earn on that on the statement. Now, this was back when a savings account was earning 5, 6%, 7%, I can remember. And so it did grow in that situation. But even now today, you can show them that compounding effect by the mathematics.
I can't remember exactly when or what the threshold was, but at one point we were able to take our oldest daughter's savings and start putting it not just in a savings account at the bank. It wasn't to the level of being able to put a life insurance policy yet, and she didn't have that amount of savings on a regular basis. But what we were able to do is put that in a higher interest earning or a higher interest bearing account so it grew faster. And so that pain would be more readily felt if you had a higher growth rate rather than, 0.04% or something like that. But um, the idea though, and I think we're ready to talk about spending money wisely. I think especially for our spending daughter, the thing that has been the greatest teaching tool for her to make wise spending choices, and I'm not sure she's always making wise spending choices still at this point, but when she realizes there is an opportunity cost of every dollar, not I don't think she's as much feeling the pain of, taking money out of savings. We haven't allowed her to do that. But okay, so she's got $25. She wants to spend it like that. Okay, but the problem that arises is tomorrow when she has a really great idea of something she really wants to buy. Now she has buyer's remorse about that thing that she spent her $25 on, and she really wants to return it because it wasn't providing as much satisfaction as the desire, and she wishes that money was available for something else. And so that kind of trade-off is something that, to be honest, I'm so glad that she's had to experience. That pain of making a poor purchasing decision of something that she regretted and then realizing that means I can't now buy Christmas presents for my family. Oh man, I really wanted to buy Christmas presents for my family, but I didn't plan well enough to make sure I had saving my spending money, not saving, spending money to be able to do that. And so that simple fact of if you spend a dollar in one place, you can't also spend it somewhere else requires the decision making to say what really will give me the greatest amount of enjoyment.
As an adult, I can tell you right now from my many years of working with adults, the biggest um, regret that they have on a large scale, not a $25 scale, on a large scale, are buying way too expensive of cars and having these anchor like payments around their neck anywhere from 800 to $1,800 a month. And here's the part that people don't realize when they, and I bring this up when we have this conversation. They said, well, it's going to be $1,000 or $1,200 a month. I go, no, it's not. And they're like, well, no, that's how much it's going to be. And I said, no, it's not, because now you have a more expensive and you have a nicer car. And in a lot of cases, it's going to be a car that is going to be more difficult to repair, both externally and internally. So the insurance goes up on that car considerably,
Yeah.
30 or 40% more. Then they also, in many states, I don't know about Virginia, but in Missouri, we have personal property tax.
Yep.
And then we have sales tax. So you have sales tax on that big car that
Yep.
people just, a lot of times they just roll it into the payment, or they will also just pay it out of a savings account or checking account, and that interrupts the compounding. Then they have personal property tax that happens every year. And the more expensive you have, the more your personal property tax goes up every year. So
And
this
the insurance, and probably it's going to use more expensive gas too,
these are all things
and be
that
less fuel efficient.
regrets on, yes, later on, but they still do it.
And I think, I mean, that question comes into, well, do I enjoy life now or do I delay gratification? And I think there's not a perfect answer for everyone on that. I think there is a spectrum or a sliding scale. And I think the question really comes down to here's the best way I can say that. If you say, I've got to spend it today or I'm going to miss out on life, my FOMO, I'm missing out on everything. I'm not traveling. I'm not seeing the world. I didn't have that amazing dinner. I didn't get that fancy car. I didn't go to the concert. I didn't do all those things. I'm missing out. That is actually scarcity as well. It's a feeling of I've got to do more, have more, be like I gotta have more in order to actually be still satisfied, fulfilled, and happy. And it's this like seeking of external fulfillment rather than internal fulfillment. On the other side is the scarcity of saying, I can't spend anything. I gotta save it all. I can't enjoy life. I can't turn on I can't turn the water any hotter because that's gonna have more energy, and I can't turn the heat on. I can't turn the AC on. Can't ever open the windows. I cannot drive around the block to the left because I gotta go, to the right only so I don't waste any more gas. Like that is gonna paralyze you from really enjoying life. And both of it is scarcity. The abundance is this middle ground of being able to enjoy life, but within limits, to take pleasure in some of the small things, that cup of coffee. You can just have the most amazing, wonderful enjoyment of a cup of coffee. It doesn't have to be $100, a $10 drink. It doesn't have to be all of the things that maybe we think we need in order to feel satisfied. Bruce, I know you were going to say something in the middle there.
Well,
Go ahead.
I just want to kind of tie this entire episode up as we're closing down in the fact that Kiyosaki's cash flow game probably teaches the one thing that if you put your money into cash flowing assets
Yep.
and then allow, whether it's a business, real estate, whether it's alternative investments, whether it's dividend paying stocks, something that's
Businesses. Yep.
income, and then you use those income things to then pay for your products, then you have this cash machine that can continue to provide you with this abundance mindset.
Yes.
You have to
So
delay gratification to get there.
you do. So you have to, there's two phases of the game. The first is the rat race, and you're going around in circles. And the whole goal of that is to keep your cash as much as possible so that when deals arise, like an investment, a business, a property, that's a good deal. You've got to evaluate the deals, that you put your money in the right things that produce passive income. That he calls it passive income, but this is income from the asset. And then you get out of the rat race when your passive income is greater than your expenses. Meaning, if you're spending that $10,000 a month in your everyday life, then you have $10,000 of cash flow coming in from your businesses, real estate, all the things that you're not having to trade your time for. And then, which we've never even gotten to the second phase of the game with our training component with our kids, but then you break out of the rat race, then you're on the fast track. And now you have like to the 10th power more money coming in, and you can do all these much bigger amazing things, and you can live your dream and go on vacations, and all of those things are all once you're out of the rat race. But the first priority is acquiring, accumulating, collecting, I guess, cash flowing assets is the main objective.
Yeah. So the final thing that I just want to wrap up is we had Jim Shields on for 18 summers, and I do think that it's easier to talk to each one of your children alone than in front of everybody else. So that would be something that you might consider doing, is having these conversations instead of all of them. I'm not saying you shouldn't have any family conversations, but instead of all of them be just family conversations, you ought to have individual conversations with your children, because they're much more likely to open up to you about their thoughts and ask questions if they're by themselves, whether that or rather than when they're in a family environment.
I agree. And I think sometimes that teaching can be most effective as well and hit their heart rather than just their brain when it's personalized.
Mhm.
I'm going to try to bring this all to a close in the next couple minutes, but I think what is really important, Bruce, you had mentioned that way to come into an adult child conversation by asking, what are the things that you wish we would have taught you? And I love that question so much because that is the kind of question that comes from this posture of humility that really is seeking to repair the relationship, that's seeking to take responsibility for something that might not have been done well or has been missed altogether. Over and over again, the people that we talk to, we hear this kind of overarching theme. They didn't have parents who talked about money. And so they're the first generation who is wanting to have this conversation, but it's very difficult because they don't have anyone to model. There was no explanation, no financial literacy training for them. And now they're feeling that they have something to teach, but they don't have any idea how to do it. And so what I would say to that is that it takes courage, it takes humility, it takes vulnerability to be willing to have the conversation. It might not go perfectly, but if you have an end goal to say, I really want my children to understand how to save money, how to delay gratification, how to spend it well, how to invest it well. And we didn't even cover protecting money. Protecting it is really important as well, and how to earn money, how to use it to make more, how to give well. If they do those things well, that's not just financial decisions. Really, what the parent is hoping for is that their kids would be wise with money, that they would have wisdom that guides their decision making so they wouldn't be slanted so far towards one extreme of spending everything or saving everything or forgetting to protect the money or not earning enough money in the first place. They really want their kids to be able to enjoy life. And money is a big part of that. Not just having money to be able to spend, but the pursuit of making it in the first place is exhilarating. And if somebody is able to step into that with responsibility and with courage, it's a wonderful pursuit if you're looking to serve people and not just being greedy and hungry for the money. So there's so much packed into this. I've told our youngest, well, the youngest daughter who is able to be trained in this stuff right now, she's learning a lot of things. And I said, you're in the phase of life, you're a skill collector. That's your number one job right now. The more skills you can collect, she's learning how to read, she's doing math, she's loving all the things that she can learn. She's identifying trees and plants. Like she's in a skill collecting phase. And I said, if you can figure out how to collect as many skills as possible, you'll be able to be more successful. If you can speak well, if you can do music, whatever it is, you're collecting the ability to do stuff. So, all of that to be said, these are some principles that you can use in teaching your kids about money. And I do want to give you guys a tool because this might be helpful to you. And so we have a course called Financial Wisdom for Kids. It is actually a roadmap for you to be able to teach your kids the 5 most important components of managing and stewarding and growing money, which is earning, saving, spending, protecting, and investing. It's not meant for your kids to read necessarily. It's a toolbox for you to be able to figure out the age of your child. This is really directed towards parents who have kids still in the home all the way up through about age 18 to be able to teach and train them so that they can have the financial literacy that they need because really you are the best person to give this to them. I know everyone says, schools don't teach this, colleges don't teach this. They might not, but the best person they can learn it from is you.
Yeah, I'm glad they don't teach it. Uh,
They would teach it wrong.
yeah.
So with that being said, if you want to get that course, you can, the best way to do it is to go, there's a link in the show notes that you can use to grab that financial wisdom for kids. And then also, if you are interested in having a conversation with our team about how to make the best financial choices for you, you can book a call at themoneyadvantage.com. And we would love to be able to walk through with you your financial situation and help you just see it from a different perspective, see your own blind spots, and be able to reimagine using your money in maybe a better and most productive way to help you accomplish your goals. So you can book that call at themoneyadvantage.com, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thanks so much for listening. And in closing, remember, success leaves clues. So model the successful few, not the crowd, and build a life and business you love. We'll see you next time.